I'd also like to echo the gracious thank you to President Higgins and Sabina for being such inspirational supporters of these initiatives. It really is very energising and inspirational to get support from the President's office. And also a thank you to Anya, Danielle and Liz for their great work on the Young Philosopher Awards and asking me to be a small part of it. So, as Joe mentioned, I teach philosophy in Trinity and I also am part of Philosophy Ireland. And I'm here today to show you a small clip from a documentary that I've been working on, but I just want to set up the programme and tell you a little bit where it came from. The programme came about first when I was approached by a filmmaker, Alan Gilsonan, to write a piece about a vision for Ireland in 100 years' time. This was the question. How could we make Ireland a better place socially, culturally, politically, economically? It was very open in 100 years. And what struck me about that question wasn't necessarily thinking about the idea of change or progress, but it was the time scale of the question. And I thought, when do we get a chance to think about the future in 100 years, in that kind of time frame? And I thought we don't get a chance to think about it that much. You know, it seems at times that we kind of live in an eternal present moment, where our attention and our gaze is often focused inward, both on ourselves and our particular moment in time. You know, we have this ability to transform our reality and our experience into a billion bits of information and data that we record and describe everyday life. And there's a constant crisis and a constant atrocity and a constant scandal and corruption that really ensures our attention never really strays too far from the present moment. You know, I thought, how can we get a chance to think about the future when it's very difficult to get a handle on what happened yesterday? And this kind of inward gaze, this present focus is almost institutionalized in our economic and political systems. You know, the short-term election cycles and the yearly focus on GDP growth ensures that decisions get made if they pay off quickly. And it makes it difficult to think long-term about things. You know, think about how we treat the environment. We're actively engaged in pursuits that are destroying the future in order to pay for the present. Similarly, with our culture of debt and financialization, we're robbing the future to pay for the present. And all of this, I think, has kind of left us in this perpetual state of crisis, in this perpetual survival mode, where really our focus is just on getting ourselves well enough and looking after our mental and physical well-being so that we can go out there and compete for jobs and for a home and just to live an ordinary, normal life. And what gets lost in this picture, I think, is a sense of historical continuity, a sense of historical time, a sense of viewing ourselves as part of a series of generations that can look back and connect to and learn from the past, but also consider the future. And it was this thought that led me to thinking about education in general and led me to thinking about philosophical education in particular. And the very best answer that I could come up with for what we could do to make Ireland a better place in 100 years' time was to do something to help people to think critically, think independently, think differently, question ideas, and particularly question those ideas that may seem invisible. Those ideas that lay behind powerful institutions and systems that govern how we live. The great Indian poet, philosopher, educator, composer Rabindranath Tagore says, "Do not limit a child to your own learning, for she was born in another time." And I think, you know, if we're going to have any chance to not only tackle but at least understand the complexity of our present moment and the situation that we're in, we not only need to think critically and think differently, but also learn how to talk to each other, learn how to listen to each other, and to be open enough and confident enough to be comfortable living in uncertainty and not knowing but still exploring. And it was this very idea of being open to changing your mind that I think was so important in philosophical inquiry, and that I've seen in Susan's class and Morel's class. But also I've been through Philosophy Ireland with Sabrina Keenan and Ashton Donlan from Maynooth. We've been teaching some philosophical inquiry in Mountjoy Prison over the summer. And one of the most fascinating evolutions that I saw in teaching in the prison was this change in the students where they became okay with changing their mind. And it wasn't a sense of personal weakness to change your mind, but in fact it could be quite liberating to listen to other people's ideas and then change your opinion on something. So Teaching philosophy in schools may not necessarily increase our GDP next year. It may not immediately respond to the crisis that we face in homelessness and poverty. It may not create many new jobs. And to some, that can make it appear as if it's a kind of luxurious or self-indulgent suggestion. But it's actually not. It's quite the opposite. It's just as necessary and just as important as responding to the very pressing crises that we face. It just takes a longer view of time. It restores a sense of historical continuity, and it situates us back in a series of generations. So really, I think what it comes down to is a question of trust in ourselves and trust in people and trust in young people, that if you create the space for people to explore the fundamental questions about what it is to be a human being and the tools to listen to each other and engage in a dialogue, then good things will come of that. Thank you. Here's a short clip.